So this is fun. So before I get started, I have to apologize. I researched and I researched and I studied, but I could not find one Star Trek clip to go with my sermon. If you know me, Chris, Star Trek, it's just what happens. If you do know of one, at the end of this, if you do know one, please come find me. Love to hear it. As Michael said, my name's Chris Jellison. I get the awesome privilege to work on staff. I get to do facilities and grounds and lead a Delta. My awesome wife, Naomi, love you, babe. Some of you guys might remember me as Ace. And, I was just telling Michael this. This is pretty funny, but I have spent so much time being Ace in front of you guys and in front of people, which is basically a cartoon version of myself. I've spent so much time being a cartoon version of myself that I realized, I haven't really just been myself. So this is a new learning point for me, new learning discovery. So if I end up in my teaching running somewhere and propping my leg up, or if I start bursting into like a macaroni and cheese song, you guys know where to place that. It's my learning curve. We're going with it. So, Hi, guys. Love to talk to you guys today. First of all, I'd love to share my testimony with you guys, but also how that plays into another question I have asked myself, I have heard many people ask me, and that question is, what's your ministry? Oftentimes what's expected and what I look for in myself is what my ministry is a practical position, something like feeding the homeless, or I'm going to be a youth pastor, or something like that. But I feel like, and I know the answer is actually a bit more basic than that, and it goes a lot deeper than that. Got a Bible story I'd love to share with you guys, how that applies to my life. But first, I'd like to give you guys some history of me, where I've been, and my testimony, and what that looks like, and how that all blends together. So as Michael said, I was a baby when I first came here, which is pretty awesome. Been coming my whole life. And, okay, so awkward story time. You got to get the awkward stories out of the way. It's good. So awkward story time. So I'm living on campus now, right? And a little while back, there was somebody on campus who took care of me when I was a toddler and a baby. And so we're washing dishes together. And I sometimes have the tendency to say things without thinking. And so I said, hey, you know what's weird? You took care of me as a baby. That means you changed my diapers. And it just got really quiet. And this poor lady, she's like, well, I never thought about it, but now that's super awkward. I wasn't going anywhere with that story, but a lot of you guys know me. A few of you know me pretty close. Anyway, like Michael said, I got to come here, experience CM, experience VBS, be a part of Coast Kids. My whole life, my mom brought me to church, which was fantastic. I'm so thankful that every week, every Saturday, it wasn't even a second thought. She'd grab me, we'd go to church. And this is also a thank you for all of you who did watch over me and for who do serve in CM for pouring out all the love that you poured out on me. Thank you so much. Growing up in the church, it was very much so my mom's church, and I didn't let it really be my church. This was my mom's church. This is what my mom does, and so I will go along with her, but it's not my church. This is just how it was until I was about 18, but we'll get to that point a little later. When I do share my story with people, the response I get is that they say I've been very blessed to have grown up in the church, to not have lived a life outside of church and then come to know the Lord, that from birth I've been introduced to this environment. And while I say, yes, that is a blessing, it comes with its own set of challenges. It really does. And I am not exempt by all means of any challenges and struggles. And one of the biggest challenges through growing up here has been my faith. sometimes I'm a bit thick-headed, and in order for me to learn something really well and correctly, I kind of have to have the contrast, right? I know what's right, but until I really know what's wrong and experience what's wrong, then I'm good to go, and I get it. So without having this huge turning point in my life of coming to Jesus, but experiencing this and growing up in this and not letting my mom's church become my church, I ended up in my junior high and high school years struggling a lot with my faith. That led into late nights, me lying in bed, just thinking through everything, thinking through God, thinking through his relationship with us, thinking through this church, and being filled with a lot of doubt. I wasn't strong in my faith, but I wouldn't vocalize it. It was just internally at night when I'd lay in bed, thoughts like, does God actually really do care about the practicals? Does he actually love me? Does he actually want to set me up for success, or is he kind of just there and I end up being with him later? A lot of thoughts of hopelessness, guys. And there were several times where I did question if God was really real. My faith just really struggled, and that faithlessness that I had turned into hopelessness. I began to not have hope for things. I began to just not expect much from God. I didn't expect him to show up because of not believing in him. And that hopelessness then turned into depression. So then because I didn't have hope in anything, because I was not looking to him or for him, I'd get sad, I'd get depressed, I'd get quiet, I'd internalize. That was my big thing. I'd stay up here. And it would just cause a swirl of emotion and depression, which then, depression, turned into me just not wanting to have emotion. I just wanted to callous my heart. I was over it. I was done. I was super emotional. I was super sad. I just didn't want to deal with emotions. I wanted to harden my heart. I wanted to be able to distance myself. We're going deep, guys, aren't we? This is it. Boom. That's right. It gets better, but we got to go a little deeper first. So yeah, that faithlessness into hopelessness, into depression, into just a callousing of my heart. If you have known me when I was a kid, it didn't really appear that way, but that's because I got really good at making a mask in front of my face. I got really good at wearing a smile and being happy Chris, but on the inside, that's not what was happening, I guarantee you. It was brutal. I wanted people to think I was a superstar from a distance. I wanted people to see, yeah, that's Chris, he's going for it. Look at all the mission teams he's a part of. Look at all the serving he's doing. Yeah, he's awesome. Because in my mind, if I could convince you guys that I'm doing great, there's no need for conversation to go deep. There's no need to open up my heart because I'm rocking it and you guys think I'm rocking it, then great. So I started living under this stress, under this performance mentality that I put in myself. This performance mentality that basically says that people love me for what I do and not who I am. In high school, I started turning into this performance mentality person that was not me. Wanting to make people really like me so that I could be accepted. Wanting to make people convinced that I'm okay. Pleasing people instead of being satisfied in myself. Pleasing people instead of pleasing God. It was stressful. It led to a lot of different things. One of which was independence. That's a big one. I wanted to be very independent. I didn't want to let people in. I wanted to take care of things myself because I didn't trust in God. I had to learn how to trust in me. Because if God can't do it for me, and I don't want others to do it for me, I'm left with me to do it for me. So I wanted to callous my heart and not let anybody in. So it's kind of this interesting place I lived in. It's kind of like two opposites. One opposite, I don't want anybody in my life. On the other opposite, I want to make people really happy. Kind of a really weird mix that just doesn't work out. I tried to make it work out, and it's also a bit comical too. Let's just take a step out of my testimony real quick. I'm a super emotional guy. I cry at the drop of a hat. I watch Toy Story, I cry. I watch Tron Legacy, I cry. I watch an episode of Star Trek, I cry. Naomi and I are watching, this happened a couple weeks ago, we're watching videos on YouTube of kittens failing at jumping, and I cry. On the other end, I get so excited about stuff. Naomi can testify to this. I don't just like something. I love it. I obsess about it. If I'm into it, I'm going to research everything there is to know about it. This is the thing, and you'll hear me say, this is the best thing in the world. Everything's the best thing in the world. So that's who I am. But flashback to high school, that's who I was trying to put that away. I didn't want to be that. I really didn't. And I wanted to develop this independence, this giving the impression of being open, convincing you, oh yeah, I'm open. I tried to learn all the right things to say to my leaders. I tried to learn how to present myself to make it sound like, oh, Chris knows what he's talking about. Oh yeah, he is being, he's repenting, he's taking instruction. This whole facade of what was really going on inside of me. Towards the end of high school, my independence, my hopelessness really took a toll on me. Left me with no hope for myself, left me with no hope for my family, left me with no hope for my friends. I was ready to call it quits. I was ready to not go to church. I was ready to just not be a part of anything. And again, this isn't something I was continually talking with my leaders. This was all up here. And I showed up to the spot where we have our youth services, and I show up, and I'm just debating, this could be my last time here. I'm over it, I'm done. There's a man in our youth group who saw me, and who saw right directly to what was going on, and without a question, he's like, let's go for a walk. Never went to service, we just went down to the lower lot and walked laps. And he just asked me what was going on. I explained to him through all the facades and through all the masks. I explained to him what was going on in my life. And he pressed me to get deeper and deeper and deeper, and he was not satisfied until I communicated what was going on. And by the end of it, I was shaking my fist and yelling and venting and crying and sobbing. And at the end of that, I received the best hug of my life. He just hugged me. That's all he did. We stopped, and once I was done shaking my fist, he put his arms around me, and did I say I cry? I cry. He hugged me. And then, from then on out, he invited me to go mini golfing. He invited me to do Bible studies. He watched movies with me. He included me in his life. But through all of that, he got at me with comfort, with love. He got to my heart through comforting me, not through correcting me, not through bashing me and saying, oh, you can't be angry, you can't. He just loved me. He just hugged me. And it started wearing down my calloused heart. And it eventually, through him and through another man, got me on track to internship. And this is when I decided this church is no longer just my mom's church. This church is going to be my church. I'm going to try this out. I'm going to let this church become my church. So I became an intern, and this performance mentality in my first year of internship was still there, very much so. Very independent, very afraid of accountability. A lot of the interns at that time were older than me significantly. I was 18, and they were all in their mid-20s. And so without giving them any chance, I tried to prove myself to them. Without giving them a chance to love me or take care of me, I did everything I can to prove that I could be as great as they are, that I can act as old as they are, that I can function and I could do stuff as great as they can. And I imagine it made me quite annoying. I don't know. But yeah, that year of internship, if I was to describe it, would be love. My leaders focused so much on just loving me. I'm just trying to get to where Chris is. I learned how to be more emotional. One of my favorite stories was a prayer time I was having with Michael. I think we were at a men's advance. We were in a hotel room. I don't know exactly where we were. We were praying against fear and independence, right? And so Michael asks me to pray against fear, as if it's this cup sitting on here in the counter. You remember this, Michael? So I'm sitting down, and I'm looking at this cup, and I say something along the lines of, well, Michael says, go for it, and I'm like, fear, you don't have a place in my life. I don't want you here. Please get out. And Michael just kind of laughs at me. He's like, no, okay, let's try a different approach. Let's get rid of the cup. Sliding glass door opens, in comes a raccoon. What are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to clap my hands, I'm going to kick it, I'm going to grab the pillow and throw it at it. And he's like, okay, pray like that. Oh. So there's lots and lots of instruction on how to be emotional. I had to relearn how to experience my emotions and how not to push them down. But still independent. Through it all, still receiving comfort. You know what I think it was too? I think me trying to prove myself, me trying to get other people to like me, what it really was a desire that I had for me to be loved, just twisted. I really, really wanted to be loved. And that's good, but the enemy really twisted it into trying to make me prove myself. In my second year of internship, so I did 2 years of internship and then I was a resident. In my second year of internship was a very big moment for me in independence. So I met Naomi, and on a scale of out of my league, she's up there and I'm floating somewhere below, underground. And but I was thinking, I want to make this one count. I love this woman. This woman's amazing. I don't want to screw this up. I want to make this one matter. I really want to make this one matter. And what I've been told is that it's a lot more helpful letting people in. So I let people into my life with my relationship with Naomi. I let people in to help me walk through what that looked like. And as I got walked through that with other people, I discovered that I actually am really stoked on my relationship with Naomi. She seems to like me, which is good. We're progressing. This is great. And so I started allowing that same accountability to happen in other areas of my life. Because of its effect that it had on my relationship with Naomi, I allowed it to go deeper. I allowed it to affect my walk with the Lord, who I was as a person, healing from my past, understanding who I am and what my vulnerabilities are and what my giftings are. I allowed it to sink deeper, little by little, allowing more and more in my life. And the more that I allowed in my life, the more I found that I loved myself. But what I really think that love for myself is understanding that God loved me. As I allowed other people to love me more, I understood God's love for me, and I was content being myself. And it really came at this performance mentality, and I started understanding that God loves me for who I am and not what I do. And I'd say the climax of it, the pinnacle moment that I would say, if there was ever a moment where I finally got it, it was the morning that I proposed to Naomi. Now, ask me about it sometime. I had a crazy elaborate plan. Super fun. I involved my parents in it. I involved my brother, and at the time, sister-in-law. No, not sister-in-law. At the time, my brother's fiance. There's no name for that, I guess, except my brother's fiance. I had this crazy elaborate plan, right? So we had to meet early in the morning. And we met early in the morning at ungodly hours, and I'm telling them my whole plan, what we're going to do, and you're going to be over here, and you're going to be over here, and it's going to be great, and we're going to do this, that, and that. All right, let's get to our cars and go. And as we're walking away, my dad's like, hey, wait, let's pray for you. Oh, okay. And so my dad lays his hand on me, and everyone lays their hand on me, and my dad prays out. And this is where I start crying again. It's one of my favorite parts of my life, though, so it's good. My dad starts praying for me and is going through a list of things, thanking the Lord for who I am, who at one moment in my life, those things that he were thanking the Lord for, I tried to push myself away from, or those were the things that I thought didn't make me a man. The fact that I cry, the fact that I'm emotional, the fact that I'm kind of crazy in a joyful way, in a good way, but that I'm sensitive and that I'm caring. These things that I once tried to remove from my life and get out of my life that I thought didn't make me a man. My dad prayed for me and thanked the Lord that I was that man. Oh boy. That was the pinnacle moment for me. Since then, I've been learning like an onion, different layers of that performance mentality, especially in facilities, and understanding God's love for me, understanding that he cherishes and cares for me for who I am and not any of the work that I accomplish. I get it now. I understand it. And when I look back at my life, when I look back at my testimony, if I was to summarize my testimony within a couple words, I would pick the words comfort and I'd pick the word joy. The Lord has brought me so much comfort in my life. Through the crazy franticness of what goes on in my head, what goes on in my life, the Lord brought me comfort, and then on top of that, he brought me a joy. And the Bible says that the joy of the Lord is my strength. And so that joy has been carrying me. And both those things become hope. And where once I was a hopeless man, I feel like I am a hopeful man. I love people. I love people so much, there's not a whole lot you can do to make me not love you. Really, okay, I won't get into that example. But I love people. So I wanted to explain to you guys my testimony so that we could look at a Bible story and I could talk to you guys a little bit about what my ministry is now. Based off what the Lord has done for me, what is my ministry and how do I look at that? So let's jump first to the Bible. We're going to look at Acts? No. I was going to say Acts chapter 8. Acts chapter 8. Woo! Chapter 8, starting in verse 25, and we're going to book it all the way down to verse 40. Okay, so at this time, the Church of God has been growing. Jesus is kind of out of the picture. Well, kind of not, because, he's, you know what I mean. He's already done his deal on the cross. So the church is growing, and the disciples are like, oh man, we need help. So they start gathering people together, right? They start bringing people in, and among these people is a man named Philip. And so Philip starts evangelizing. He starts preaching here, he starts preaching there, and then Saul who later becomes Paul and writes several books in the Bible. He's ravaging the church. The word they actually use is ravaging, which I don't know what that looks like. I mean, they give a few examples, but... And through it all, Philip is evangelizing. And now Philip decides to go to Samaria and evangelize. And so he's evangelizing there, and people are getting saved, miracles are happening. The Bible even says there's this magician who heard Philip evangelizing and saw the miracles that was behind the name Jesus and not behind his, magical ways, hocus pocus. And